This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, fantasy book fans? This is Steven, your host with Phantology Podcast. I have my lifelong friends Josh and Ryan on with me, and we're doing a fun episode today. We're talking about rating books, obviously, specifically science fiction fantasy books. How do we rate books? Can this rating change throughout the read process? Are there things that really like knock it down or boost it up? And can we forgive a book for its mistakes if it redeems in other ways? So just kind of a general chat through, what does this look like? Because we see these Goodreads stars, out of five, and it's like, yeah, how do I really interpret that as just one number? But there's so much to a book.
Nice. I'm excited. I think that this is a pretty applicable topic amongst the bookish community on YouTube and so forth. And so I think it's good to check in, even evaluate ourselves every so often because we generally give ratings in most of our podcast episodes whenever it's about a book review. So it's kind of good to get our thoughts on the matter out there.
And I think it's especially applicable just because I've noticed that there's maybe inconsistencies in how we all rate books, meaning that a 5 out of 10 means something different for
Yeah.
some of us. I think, like myself, I would probably consider a 6 or a 7 out of 10 average, kind of like a grading scale. And
Hmm.
I think maybe Josh, you consider a 5 out of 10 average.
Well, yeah, but that goes back to the point that I think that I'm saying that that's average in terms of all the books out there and not just all the books that we read. I think we read above average books. You know what I mean? So like even the average book we read is going to be like an above average, like overall in the whole plethora of books out there, an above average book. So I say like a 5 out of 10 would be like a true average, but that's like including all the slop like from our episode a few weeks ago, like including all the like tier one, tier two, tier three levels that we like don't spend a lot of time rating in. So
Hmm. Right. We only have so much time, so why waste the time on stuff we can be pretty confident is going to be like below a five?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would say pretty much every book I read is recommended by somebody I know, or online. I don't think I
Hmm.
really, and maybe this is to my own detriment, I don't really read books that I just see online and I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll read it.
Yeah.
Well, you're fortunate to be part of a vibrant online community, such as the case of the Phantology Discord, which you listener should also be wanting to join and can in the episode description below. But not everyone has that, right? And so some people are just looking around in the general internets to try to find recommendations, and
Well,
that can vary a lot.
if they're listening to this now, if you're listening to the sound of my voice, then congratulations, you now have it.
And,
Yes.
and and honestly, the interesting thing is that I feel like a lot of people will just go onto like the Kindle Unlimited store and just kind of read whatever is being, marketed to them. Similarly to how I would just tune into Netflix and just be like, oh, this is top 10 this week. Let me throw that on and give it a shot. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So I try and be more discerning than that most of the time, but not all the time. So anyway, I think that if you do that, then you would get a lot better of a taste for like what the actual like ones and twos and threes would look
Do
like.
you think people really do that? Or are you just equating like watching behavior to reading behavior and saying like if it was
Somewhat,
the same, this is what it would look like?
somewhat doing that. Here's the thing, Stephen, and hopefully people aren't listening to this that might be listening to this. But we kind of share
Oh,
our Libby account, with a lot of our
right, right.
friends. A lot of our friends' wives also use the Libby account with us. And I see some things pop up on Libby every now, and I think and I've like opened up some of those books, given them a read whenever I'm like
Oh,
don't have
really?
anything to
Have
read.
you?
Well, just
Okay.
like not a ton of them, but like I'm like, oh yeah, this is not good, some of the time I think that, and I do not read it. And
Beware, members of the shared Libby account. Josh knows what you're reading.
no, I mean usually I'm like, oh, I want to at least like look interesting, but like honestly, I have no idea who, I have no idea.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
I wish that we could know, not for the purpose of like judging, but there are books that I like see people reading and I'm like, oh, I wonder like who is reading that? Could I talk to them about it? Like maybe a month or so ago, I saw somebody reading Inheritance. And so I was
Yeah,
wondering,
yeah,
I
I
was
saw
like,
that too.
who's reading Inheritance right now? I want to talk to them about it because I didn't think
Mm.
that it was any of us in Fantology. So, it's either one of our friends or their partners.
if it's anything to do with Percy Jackson, it's Liam. So he loves all the Percy
There,
Jackson books and all
there
that.
was one time, sorry, I'm getting a little far of our topic, but was like, I had just barely renewed one of my library cards, and it had already had 10 of its, all 10 of its loans maxed out. And I looked at them, and they were all children's books. And so I like texted Jake, and I was like, "Hey, have you checked out children's books?" And he was like, "Yeah, sorry, we're on a road trip, and we're trying to get Jonas to calm down, and it's not working."
Oh, that's
So
awesome. Yeah. Okay.
Nice.
quickly returned those.
Okay, so to the topic, to circle back to the topic at
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
So let's start with just kind of a general like what goes into to your rating? Like if you're giving something a six, what does that kind of generally mean? Uh, to kind of go to your point, usually I'm between like a six and a nine. Like I don't really give anything a 10. I don't, maybe that's not fair, but like it always seems like there's some flaw that you can pick out. So it's like nothing can be perfect. I don't know, that's weird. But you would hate for me to be your professor, I guess, if I was teaching a class. But then yeah, I don't rate things too low. Although I guess I'm trying to be more harsh, but it's just kind of hard. It just feels like mean-spirited
Yeah.
sometimes to knock things
Here's the
down too
thing.
much.
And we're going to talk about it maybe a little bit later on when we give the rating, but like generally I if I don't like I won't keep reading a book if I would think I'm going to rate it less than like a 5. You know what I mean? Like I'll probably just DNF it. And
Mm.
so do I end up like we probably wouldn't do an episode on there. So would I publicly rate it? Because I don't really do Goodreads that much. So like Fantology is my way of like publicly rating things. So I probably would never like publicly rate that. So like,
Well, a lot of people on Goodreads will say low rating DNF.
right. I don't, I guess I don't really do Goodreads. So, but that's why I think if I were to go on and do that, then I would even probably feel kind of bad. And this is kind of what inspired this conversation. But I think think I would feel like I would have to finish a book to give it a rating. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that that other people shouldn't, but
Mm,
I personally feel like I would at least need to see it through to be like, here's an actual rating, or just say I DNF'd it.
okay.
See, I think that's almost situational because if the author is small enough where a bad rate, maybe they have like 1, 2, 3,000 ratings or less than that, then giving them a poor rating might, is significantly more, it affects their score more than, if it's a well-read book with 50,000 plus ratings. So I wouldn't feel bad going on there and like giving a romantasy book with like 100,000 ratings, 1 star. But if it was like a small author with a small following and I DNF their book, I would definitely feel guilty like going on there. And because I'm sure lots of those smaller authors are on Goodreads reading their reviews. And, like even if I don't like their book, I don't want to hurt their self-esteem. I don't want to prevent them from, being able to do their job in the future.
Mm. I feel like it's really important when you rate books. I have a few opinions on this, and this is maybe one of my strongest ones, is you have to be like somewhat objective, right? Objective, not subjective, in what the quality of the book actually is, because there's a lot of stuff that maybe is like not for me, but that's just preference. And I feel like it's really not fair to mark something down too low if it's just because the book was not, my cup of tea per se. If the reason why it wasn't for me was because the writing was bad or the characters were wooden or the plot was boring or whatever, like that's fine. Like those are legit reasons for marking something down. But if you're like, this book was full of action and I don't care for action. I just like, kind of sitting with the character and enjoying the story. It's like, well, sorry. I mean, that's not a reason to rate it lower. It's just a reason for you to maybe like refine what you read because you don't like
Yeah.
action heavy
It,
books.
it's kind of hard because it's kind of like I'm just coming up with this term, but it's kind of like the Hallmark movie effect, where it's like all the like pretty much most Hallmark movies are going to have a very similar structure. You know what I mean? Like a big city girl goes to a small town and sees, the
Hmm.
farm boy, and then but she also, like there's just like the structure,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so like people that like Hallmark movies are going to like that, you know what I mean? Because they like that structure. And then if a Hallmark movie tried to like subvert that structure or whatever, they probably wouldn't like it, even if like somebody else would come in and be like, "Oh no, that like that I think would make it a better movie." You know what I mean? Like so I think it's kind of tricky where some books are going to be like that too, where like you said, if it's just not for you, but also like if the book was trying to did what it was trying to do well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
If the Hallmark
that's the
movie did what it
thing,
was trying to do
right?
well, then great. I'm glad people enjoy that and can get like joy out of consuming it, whether or not
Hmm.
like I specifically liked it. So anyway, yeah, that's some
I'm a little
thoughts.
curious, just what you guys would rate like an objectively good book or an example of what you guys have read that's an objectively good book but didn't work for you. For me, I would say Dune.
Mm.
I don't even know if Dune is like that objectively of a good book.
Steve,
Oh,
Steven coming in with the hot takes. Coming in.
It definitely didn't work for me, but I mean, I'm a little fuzzy because it's been a little bit, but I remember like solid reasons why it didn't work for me. I just thought the way the pacing was structured was kind of all over the place, and I didn't like how it basically gave away what was going to happen like well in advance of things. It was a very, I don't know, it was a very abnormal type of story and like not in a way that I really appreciated. I mean, I guess there's some subjectivity in all of this. Who am I to be like the great literary critic, right? But I feel like there were reasons I
you're
didn't like it.
Stephen effing Merrill, okay? You're the greatest literary critic Fantology has ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Uh,
Fantology's ever seen.
uh, I don't know. This one's hard. I think like Red Rising, but I again like I don't know if that's like an objectively good book. I think a lot of people like it, but I don't know if it's like objectively good. You know what I mean?
Wait. Sorry, I'm so wrapped up in the whole like Dune thing. You're responding to Ryan's question.
Yeah.
You're saying
Yeah.
Red Rising is
I
the
think
one
a
you put
lot of
on the
people
pedestal
maybe,
as the
yeah, but I don't
But
think
then
that
no,
he's
man. I
that's
also
don't
he's also saying
no.
maybe it's not even
I
objectively
don't know if
good.
it's like objectively good enough to be on that pedestal, but it's like one where a lot of people like it that I don't. So
Okay.
Uh,
does that make sense? Are you saying oh no because it's not like objectively good enough
oh,
or because
Sorry, wait. Part of Ryan's question was something that you think is objectively good but didn't work for you.
yeah, yeah.
And so
Right.
Josh was saying maybe Red Rising, but wait, maybe that's
I
not
see.
even objectively good.
I'm saying like objectively good
Okay.
where yeah, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I know a lot of people like it, so I
Yeah.
know I'm like probably on the like other end of the distribution of like people like would give it a lower rating than what most people would give it, but like I don't know if it would be like an objectively good
Uh-huh.
book. Yeah.
Uh-huh. I don't know, man. I feel like for you, I would go with Greenbone and Robin Hobb
No,
before
but I did like
Red
those
Rising as the
I did like those books, but yeah, but not as much as you. Like again, I
Hmm.
think I gave all those books like between like a 7 and 8. I liked them. I thought that they
Okay.
were well like above
I
average.
guess maybe I was so like stuck in the Josh doesn't like these as much as me that it seemed like you didn't like him at all.
Yeah, I had my criticisms for them, but yeah, dang, I don't know. I feel like I could probably name a lot more movies like that than books. But again, that's probably because I like wouldn't finish a book where it's easier to finish a movie. So I don't know.
Hmm.
So at the high end of the scale, I don't think a 10 needs to be perfect. I think a 10 is just
Yeah, it
maybe
probably
your
doesn't.
favorite book.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that Words of Radiance is probably a 10 for me. Um, and it's maybe like, one of my favorite fantasy books that I've read. And I think that, um, yeah, so maybe it's like your own personal masterpiece, right? There are flaws in masterpieces, but
You feel like there's a limited number of tens that you personally can give out?
yeah,
Like
maybe.
if you're
And
trying to go through and if you come up with like more than like five, do you say, okay, no more, no more tens?
not necessarily, but I think maybe the bar moves as you read more books. And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
in middle school, Aragon was definitely a 10 for me. And now the
Uh-huh,
bar
uh-huh.
has definitely moved up. And so I still, it still has a fond place in my heart, but it's not no longer a 10. I've
Yeah,
changed. The books I've read have changed.
yeah.
Mm.
And that's the hard thing when it comes to like things that you loved in your youth, kind of like Harry Potter, like, you know, or even things like Brandon Sanderson, like where it's just as you read more and as you go through life,
Yeah.
like what do you like changes.
Maybe that's the thing. Like if you read it years ago and you return to it after having read a lot more books and you still love it and still would rate it really high, maybe that's a mark of a 10.
Yeah, it is, and it's going back to like what we talked about previously with like the stage of like who it's for, the stage of its life. Like I mentioned, Liam's like reading the Percy Jackson books and the Harry Potter books, and he like loves them so much. And I
Hmm.
even like made him give me a rating out of 10 or whatever. But like he just like loves them like in a similar way to like I love them as a kid. So like just because I don't enjoy them as much now as I did when I was a kid, does that mean that like they aren't a 10 anymore, or I should have never given them a 10? Or if but if I, you know what I mean? Like that's when it gets into like a little bit of trickiness, I think.
Mm.
Um, yeah.
So, Steven, for you, maybe The Name of the Wind would be a 10.
Yeah, The Name of the Wind is a 10 for me. I mean, I've read it many times over the
Mm.
years, proud but maybe too many. But although it has been it's been a few years since
So
the
so
last
here
reread. Maybe, but anyway, each time I've loved it, so it's
so
it's a
here's
10.
the question though, Stephen. If like the series is never finished, does that lower it from being a 10?
Honestly, I don't think so because you're rating the single book. Like if you want to rate the series, then obviously that would
But it's stuff that
that
happens
would
in the
be
book
a
that just never gets paid off.
but that stuff was never going to be paid off in the book. Like you have to, I feel like if you're rating a book, you have to limit the scope to the book only.
I
And
see. I kind
if you're rating the series, then fine.
No, but I
Like
kind of disagree because that is an aspect of that book is setting something up. And if that's something that is being set up never gets paid off, even if it was always planned to be for another book,
you think
that
it's
is
unfair
still
to
a
assume
failure.
that you think it's unfair to assume that the payoff would have been perfect.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I guess I could see that. I could see that
Yeah.
argument.
And it is hard because like I don't want to say like if an author dies or something, then that means that their book can, like a previous book in the series, can never be rated a 10. Like, I don't necessarily think that's the case. You know what I mean? So I think that I'm not sure that this is like a hard ironclad rule,
Uh-huh.
but like, I do think that that does deserve to be like examined where, especially in like a serialized
Huh.
format, like The Name of the Wind, that does do a lot of setup, you know, it
So
Yeah,
if you think if a book's got a lot of setup in it in the first book, and then the last book comes out and it turns out that that setup thing was just like really stupid, it was like
I
some
mean,
big
kind of
MacGuffin,
like, how does that
then
not
then
objectively
then
lower
you've
it?
got to go back and be like, wait, we spent all this time with this thing. It's
Yeah.
stupid. Like this book
I mean,
sucks now.
kind of like, yeah.
I think that there's definitely situations where it could lower the rating. I mean, for Anthony Ryan, I'm blanking on what's the name of the first book in
Blood
the
Song.
Blood Song.
series? Blood Song. Yeah. I think that book when I read it was, nine, 9.5. But I mean, the end of that trilogy has has really reduced my desire to reread it. And so it was just
Yeah,
like
I guess
such a
that's fair.
strong debut. And as much as I still love that book, I just feel like not sticking the landing has just
Mm.
really hurt the series overall, which reflects on the first book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you have to. There's some consideration for the story in the book and also the story of the series. Okay,
Yeah.
fair.
And I think that's what makes the 10 out of 10 series kind of like the Lord of the Rings, where the whole series is executed really, really well. And honestly, partly why I think Mistborn is kind of underappreciated because the whole series, like the ending stuck the landing in that, which is really hard to do. You know what I mean? And so like I
Mm,
think that there are that there that does deserve some consideration, but it's hard to do when you're giving an
okay.
individual book rating, because yeah, like yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough.
So before we get into specific examples, let's hit on a couple more points of criteria here. What are some of the biggest things a book can do to improve its rating or tank its rating? Like you're reading along and you've noticed this thing and it's like, okay, like I really like this or I really hate this.
I have one, and it's kind of an obvious one, but the ending has to be good. Like I know that that's kind of like an obvious one, and it doesn't like. I use this example all the time, but Stephen King has pretty not good endings to his books,
Mm,
and I still really like most of his books. And even like I mentioned last time, like Pet Cemetery might be like a 10 for me, But that being said, like a lot of his books really struggle with the ending, and it always kind of leaves like a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth that I can't help like but get rid help but like that note
okay.
is just left. And whereas Sanderson kind of has the opposite problem with that, where like sometimes the middle of his books struggle a little bit with pacing and stuff, but then the last like 10%, the Sanderlanche, is just like usually pretty excellent in most of his books.
Yeah.
And it leaves me feeling like on a high. So
Mm.
yeah,
And you don't rate it usually until the end.
usually,
So
yeah,
how you're
yeah,
feeling at the end, has a little bit more of an
it
effect
does.
than how you're feeling in the middle.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my kind of
So
not so
what's
hot take is the ending of the book
what do you
matters,
think
but
is better to have a good middle or a good ending? Because if you have a bad middle, then your people might be more likely to just not even finish the book.
yeah, I don't know. I think for me, ending is it's more important to have a good ending, and
Yeah,
that
I
might be kind
agree.
of the more hot take. But like, I think that I think that maybe if the ending of your book isn't so good, maybe that it goes back to like the idea that like maybe just that whole series conversation now is like more of
Mm,
a myopic down to the ending. Maybe the middle didn't really do what it needs to do to set up a good ending if the ending wasn't good. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
maybe that reflects more poorly on the middle.
When you say ending, are you talking like climax to the end?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah,
you know,
kind of. Like I'm not talking
in,
like maybe if a
in our
book,
like in our
yeah,
sixth grade like
like the
story
falling
structure,
action. I'm not
yeah, all
referring to the
that.
falling action. Mostly like the
But
climax.
the climax, the big
Yeah.
thing, the
Yeah.
resolution to the whole thing. Right.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Hmm.
I have one that's maybe a little silly. Um, but if there's like a romance in the book, I honestly prefer for it to, continue building for a while. I don't want it to pay off too early. I like the will they, won't they. So if there's,
Mm,
it, if it's like they get together too soon, I'm like, oh, great. Like now the rest of the book, moves on to whatever the next phase of this relationship is, which is usually
no,
less
well,
boring or
they're
less
together and then
exciting.
they're forced apart, right? That's the next
Yeah.
step.
Well, if they're forced apart or there's like, you insert all of these like lack of communication that drives
Uh-huh.
problems in the
Uh-huh.
relationship or whatever. Just I feel like relationships kind of get less exciting as a reader and as like a watching movies or TV shows like after they actually get together.
The Jim and Pam phenomenon.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yes, that is the perfect example for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they tried to like throw in some marital spat with Jim and Pam and it just made you dislike both of them because this is not believable. We don't like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
For
I-
me, just some bad element. I mean, these are kind of basic, but if the prose doesn't sound good, it really turns me off. I can't get it out of my head. I think this sounds kind of juvenile. I don't like it very much. Most books we read don't really have that problem, but there have been a few that have been recommended and I like get into it. I'm like, this is not very good. Also, like wooden characters or someone who just seems like they only really have one side of their personality developed. That's a tough read as well. And then worlds, like especially in fantasy, worlds that are built out, but only in like a few places that just kind of feel like populated. Daniel Green made this point in his like level video. But if it feels like it's populated by cardboard people or places and it's not like a real place, then that turns me off as well. I recently read the winner of Mark Lawrence's self-published book competition for this year, and it had that problem. It just felt like the scope of the whole world was like limited down to like three locations, even though there's this big map, and I really didn't like that.
yeah. I think the other one other thing for me is um it depends, but kind of pacing as well. Sometimes it yeah. I'm sometimes okay with just sitting and going through like a Wheel of Time story style book where the pacing is kind of
Mm,
slow and methodical and stuff, but where the pacing is just kind of all over the place where sometimes like a
yeah,
lot's going on and then there's just a lull for like 30 chapters or whatever, like for a third of the book where not much happens. I kind of struggle
right.
with that sometimes. And I feel like, going back to a recent review, I feel like the Life Ship Traders book kind of struggled with that a little bit. And didn't like turn me off or anything, but it did make it a little bit harder to read.
Mm. Yeah, I could see the jarriness of the pacing. That's where it becomes a problem. I'm yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm usually not bothered too much by the pacing. So I like reading fast stuff and I like reading slow stuff, but where it's like where you don't know what to expect and it doesn't feel like it's like fulfilling what the book is setting out to do, that's where it starts to be weird.
So question, how many points would you guys take off for these type of things on a out of 10 scale? I think for like a bad ending, I think that's almost like a 2 pointer. Like I don't think I could give a book that didn't have like an amazing like an ending that I enjoy or an ending that I actively thought was bad. I don't think I could give it like above a 10, maybe a point and a half, I guess.
Hmm.
But like yeah, I don't think I could give it like above an 8 or an eight and a half.
So it's like a perfect book and then the ending just sucks and so now it's an 8.
I mean, again, like a lot of Stephen King's books would like kind of almost fall into that category. But yeah,
Mm,
like I think like a point and a half, maybe like if it's like really, really, really bad, yeah, maybe like
yeah.
2 points is what I dock for it.
Trying to think of an example. Honestly, Name of the Wind is kind of an interesting example for this because it doesn't really, and we should say we're going to talk about book examples, but we're not going to like do specific plot things. So
Yeah.
we're not gonna spoil anything, although we are going to talk about like elements we liked. But Name of the Wind is very much a slow burn. It has a little bit of a climaxy type of thing. I mean, well, more than a little bit, a medium climax that kind of gets at some stuff that's set up throughout the book. But then it just kind of like continues with more small stuff and then it just kind of ends.
Yeah.
But I didn't mind at all, like because the book was like never promising like a big battle at the end in any way, and I felt like it was really true to itself.
Well, so that doesn't mean that that's like a bad end.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it that it was a bad ending. I'm just thinking that,
It
like this
wasn't
is
a Sander wrench
it's
though.
an interesting example to some of the other points that we brought up. I think
Gotcha.
we can kind of like start transitioning into some examples for some of these points.
Hmm. Gotcha. Yeah, I think I've kind of grounded some examples out already. Like Stephen King, I don't want to say specific books, but most of his
Mm.
books have weird endings, or at least endings that aren't to my taste. Although hot take, Dark Tower, I think is a good ending. So there you have that.
Mm.
Um, and then
Is it a lot of people don't think
yeah,
that
a lot of
Dark
people really
Tower?
don't like Dark Tower's ending. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and then yeah, I think like Robin Hobb, I think she does have some pacing issues. Um, characters and yeah, characters are weird for me because like I like good characters. I really like good characters, but again, if they're as long as they're doing interesting things, I think that like even sometimes boring characters are fine for me if they're doing cool things. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is that like a
Mm.
big for me kind of like I feel like almost like Lord of the Rings is an example of that, where a lot of the characters in Lord of the Rings, I mean, the movies help spice them up a little bit, but like in the books, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the
Yeah,
characters aren't like super interesting in the books,
I guess that's
and but
fair.
they're all like doing cool things in the books. So
Hmm. The
Yeah, it's
movies,
what
it really is almost tough for us to rate the Lord of the Rings books because we've seen the movies. The movies were like part of our childhood. I don't know that any of us read the books before. And even if we did read like parts of it, it was, years ago. So it's so hard to reread the books and not like have the impressions and the epicness of the movies and characters
yeah,
in your mind.
yeah. My dad would read us The Hobbit when we were like little kids.
Mm,
I think he read some of the Lord of the Rings as well. So
yeah.
that's true. Liam hasn't seen them yet. I should read him the books before he watches the movies. See what
Yeah.
he thinks.
Yeah. Yeah. He's our test case.
Because the
Be our
books,
our guinea pig.
yeah. Because honestly, I think he could be old enough for the books, but like the movies are, they're still kind of scary, you know?
oh yeah.
8-year-old, yeah. But I
Oh,
think,
yeah, I was terrified by the ring race when I was a kid.
but yeah, we were about eight. It came out 2000, 2001, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
crazy. I saw
And I
them in
was
theaters.
terrified of those things, dude.
Remember the
He
Dead
was like, "Don't
Marshes?
show that to Liam."
The
Oh,
Dead
that was
Marshes
scary.
was so scary.
I think all of our parents are like, "Oh, if it's PG-13, it's fine." You know what I mean? Which like now I'm not like
No, they wouldn't. I was not like allowed to watch them, but I remember like sneaking down like the rails of the stairs to like watch like the TV
like as they were
20,
watching it,
20, 30 feet away or something when I was a kid.
and you just came down seeing the ring wraiths.
Yeah, and paying the price, man.
Dude, your dad, and honestly, I would probably do this as a dad. It's just like fast, like knows you're there. Like parents always know when their kids are sneaking down, okay? But like
Uh,
probably knew you were there and just like put it on the ring race part to like teach you a
oh,
lesson.
man.
It
Okay,
stuck with you for the last 20 years.
gotta confront about this one. An example. So I think I kind of disagree with you on the character thing, Josh. I think an example there is Mistborn Era 2. I didn't care for much of that, and I feel like it was because I never thought Wax was an interesting character. And the stuff that happens is like really exciting. Like there's all these big set pieces, lots of magical gun action and explosions and fights and all, hijinks and heists and all this stuff. But I never really cared about who was doing it.
Fair enough.
What about Malazan? I feel like that's a
Y-
good example where the characters
Mm,
themselves aren't like super they weren't really why I read them. It was more like the action, the happenings of the world. And characters do epic things. But
yeah,
you're not really like you're not as invested in them as you might be in a lot
I
of
think
other books we read.
I think that comes back to like what is the book setting out to do? Like I don't know, Stephen Erickson might disagree with this, but I never got the sense that Malzen was setting out to introduce me to these amazingly dynamic characters. Like, there's some characters that are better than others, but I feel like the story is one of empires and millennia and gods and things,
Yeah.
and the people you're reading about are just kind of pawns in the story, and yeah. So, I mean, Malazan is tough in other ways, and I don't know, we probably don't want to spend too much time dissecting that, but I wasn't too bothered about that in Malazan. But I did not feel like that in Era 2 because I felt like Brandon was trying to develop characters that you liked, and I just didn't like
Mhm.
them.
Hmm, interesting.
Not all of them. It's mostly Wax. I thought was really wooden, and Wayne I was obnoxious. So those were the main two. And it's tough to recover from not liking the main two.
Yeah.
So I mean,
How
is that
about
really a case of like I feel like that's more unlikable characters for you rather than just, not actively, loving being in their shoes and their head.
It seems like Wayne would be a unlikable character just Steven, and Wax is just more of a wooden character. Do I have that right, Steven? Or
yeah, that's what I would say, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But for like a good Sanderson example, so for me, going back to the whole beginning, middle, end thing, I am like super forgiving of a bad beginning or a boring beginning. I feel like it's tough to have like a bad beginning to a book, but a lot of times
unless you're a
there are
series of
boring.
unfortunate events,
Yeah, there you
then
go.
then you have a
Literally
bad
a bad
beginning.
beginning. Nice one. Actually crossed my mind as I was saying that, so nice call. But Sanderson's beginnings, he adds in like action scenes, a lot of kind of similar to how a lot of action movies start, where you're right in the middle, especially like heist movies, they start in like a small stakes action bit. So you're like, okay, this is an exciting movie, and we're like in the action right from the beginning, like beginning of yeah, beginning of Mistborn, Kelsier comes in and there's some action. Beginning of Stormlight Archive, Way of Kings, same thing happens with Zeth. And so Sanderson, he does that because I think he knows that there's a lot of kind of boring stuff that has to happen, a lot of just conversations that has to happen in order to set you up for it. But even so, a lot of people I think get turned off from his books because they're like, oh, this is like really long and boring. But I'm really forgiving of that. So I mean, for me, I'm fine with that. I think the middle can be. I'm probably more critical of the middle. I think the middle needs to be like going somewhere. It needs to be going towards the end in a way that pays off the end. But you need to have like exciting things that are happening along the way that don't just seem like they're there to soak up space while we try to get to the exciting end that you have planned.
Well, but I mean, kind of, and I'm glad Jake's not here because he would eviscerate me for this. But that's kind of like Wheel of Time does a lot of that a little bit, don't you think?
Oh, there are plot lines in Wheel of Time that I totally hate. Like,
But like, yeah, but
yeah, I mean,
I feel like a
I think
running
there's a
theme
lot
of
of
even the good books is like characters just going someplace and like interesting things happen as they go to that place.
yeah, yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think there's a lot more good than there is bad, but there are certainly some examples like kind of later Perrin's plot line, the Bowl of Winds stuff. I know we're gonna do specifics, but I'm just like throwing out generals. I think that's fine. Like this stuff is boring and really would have been better to just not even include in the series.
Hmm. Okay, fair enough.
But it sounds like maybe your list would be longer
No, well,
than
it's just
mine,
interesting
but
because like I think that's again that's where it comes back to how many points, how big of a ding is that for you? If like the
mm,
middle is just kind of fine, because it seems like objectively you would say that Wheel of Time struggles with that, but like I've never really heard you mention like that really hurting Wheel of Time score very much, or like
oh yeah,
or
from
you
that
know what I mean?
aspect.
So if it's like maybe a half a point thing
No,
for you,
there's definitely like the books that focus on those specific things that I mentioned, those are lower than other
yeah,
books.
fair,
But there's plenty of books that don't have those things that I just like love.
nice.
Other examples, how about I think Dresden Files might be a good one. All three of us have read all of those. I think the books vary a lot from a maybe start to the series that aren't isn't amazing to some of the I think like books 10 through 15 are really peak. And then I don't know, some people haven't liked the last couple quite as much, and I see why. What do you th can you guys think back to those and like put together any clues to why ratings have varied so much in that series?
Um,
Definitely at the beginning, it's easy to point to the fact that he was just starting out writing. And so Jim Butcher was, I think, finding finding it, getting into his stride for writing. And so he definitely learned a lot along the way. And I mean, I would have DNF'd the series if nobody had recommended I push through. I think I did DNF the first book once before, finishing it the second time.
Mm,
Um, but I think that, it's a good example of like him maturing too as a person. Like a lot of Dresden Files is influenced by, like maybe not directly by his personal life, but like his mood or, his struggles with mental health and so that may help or hurt his writing and um definitely like outside of like the quality of the books it's certainly affected the pacing of the writing so it's like really interesting to see like a series that's got so many books long and a wide I think like they're for the most part they're all above average enjoyment so it's I think fairly consistent, average, above average, and even some, like peak moments.
yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of those books too, it does come down to a lot of the characters that are in each book, whether it's, I don't want to spoil things, but like there's kind of a rotating cast of characters. And for me, I
mm,
enjoyed about reading about some of those characters a lot more than others. Like it turns from kind of a villain of the week to here's a group of villains that this might be about, or a group of, who's going to be in this book
mm,
that I would know pretty early on if I thought I was going to like it or not.
yeah.
Yeah, and some of the books are more related to like a greater conflict, and some of them are more self-contained conflicts.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I've liked the ones that are, and I mean, some of this obviously is subjective, but I've liked the ones that are greater conflicts. And anytime it's a, anytime it's a Nicodemus book, get
Hmm.
hype for that type of, yeah. So yeah, definitely there are some characters that are preferable above others. The Fae books, yeah, maybe not quite
They get
as
a
much.
little freaky.
Yeah, yeah, really. How about First Law, or or you can include The Devils, so just Joe Abercrombie in general, because another one where the first book, is not great. I think it's probably the weakest of his books, and not that much happens. It's not terrible, but comparatively, like it gets a lot better.
Yeah, I think that Joe Abercrombie just has such a good voice. He knows how to work a scene really, really well. I think that The
Yeah.
Devils shines in that. And I haven't actually reviewed The Devils since it came out, but I think that, you know, the greater arc of the story is kind of lost a little bit in The Devils, but still, like in from the first law to all the short stories, like just scene to scene, he knows really how to like open a scene, how to build within that scene, and how to have that scene have really good payoff. And all of his really great books, those scenes all work really, really well together and to produce like a great book. And I think that so I think he's really grown into that. Anyway, I think that's what I like most about him. I'm reflecting more and more about his writing and why it clicks so well is because he
Mm,
just knows how to structure those scenes really well. Yeah.
Now, here's something that maybe we shouldn't judge a book off of, but I think it's becoming more and more prevalent is the narrator for the audiobook. A bad narrator can, drag a book down pretty far, if and to no fault of the author's part on the author's behalf, because I'm sure a lot of times they don't have any say in the narrator. But I mean, like for First Law. Stephen Pacey's an amazing narrator, and it's like I can forgive probably a lot just like to hear his
mm,
voice and his characters, and I think he like further enhances Joe Abercrombie's voice, and so I guess
Yeah.
it's just a modern era where so many of us consume books. via listening rather than physic reading with our eyes.
I think another good example of that, Ryan, is Travis Baldree.
Baldry.
Yeah, yeah. Him doing like the Cradle series, he like adds a lot to that series for me, I think.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, for me, I don't know. Like, I don't, I, I don't. I think a narrator can add. I don't know how much a narrator usually subtracts for me, to be quite honest. I don't think I've ever really had a book ruined by a narrator. It'll take a few chapters for me to like get into a new voice that I haven't like heard before, but I haven't had that experience too much. So,
Mm.
I did not like the audio book narrator for Fourth Wing.
oh,
Um,
I also agree. Okay, yeah, maybe I take that back. Man, it seems like the narrator for that book just exemplifies everything I don't like about that series and like puts it into like a voice. Sorry, that might be too mean, but yes.
Oh man, I haven't had the privilege there, but maybe I'll stay away. All right, we're a wrap here. We're at time. So thanks for tuning in. Let us know in the comments some examples, how you rate books, etc. What types of things are really big issues for you and don't matter, etc. And if you want to join that community, that hot community that I mentioned, you can do that. The invitations are in the episode description below, and hop on and let us know your opinions and feel free to chat us up. All
Tell
right,
us how we
Josh,
should
Ryan.
be rating
Yeah.
books
Yeah, tell
Also,
us what we're getting wrong.
yeah, also give us a 5-star rating. We don't usually say that, but just throwing it out there,
because we
Yeah.
deserve it.
yeah, there we are impeccable. We had a good beginning, middle, end, everything.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really impossible to see any
great
flaws
characters,
here. So
great narration.
5 stars, like and sub.
Nice.
See y'all later.
Yeah.
By